many people realize this, but as of right now, it's looking like Donald Trump is shaping up to become one of the most powerful presidents in modern US history. And for those of you less interested and invested in politics, you might be thinking, well, doesn't every president have the same amount of power? No, it might seem that way, but because America is a democracy, a president's true power to make radical changes can really be limited to the amount of support they get from other segments of the government. And I mean, we've all seen it. Every 4 years, a presidential candidate comes along and promises to change the world, and that's known as their agenda. But when they actually take office, it seems like not a lot really changes. And that's because a lot of their attempts to pass these bold new initiatives get blocked. And here's where things get interesting. A lot of those things that would normally block a president's agenda are falling away one by one for Trump right now as he heads speedily to take office in 2 months. Of those who voted for him, this is great news. This is more of what you voted for. But for those who didn't, not only did you not want Trump, but what you're probably gonna get is the most powerful Trump the world has ever seen. So let's talk about the who's, the whys, and how one man could change not just America, but the entire world. A lot of stars have kind of aligned for Trump in this election, but it all starts with one key victory: the popular vote. And you know what's crazy? Even when he won the actual election in 2016, he still didn't win the popular vote. And critics have always said, Trump, even if he may win, he will never win the popular vote. But this time, he actually did. But unlike the electoral college vote, which ultimately decides who becomes president, the popular vote reflects the direct will of the people because it shows which candidate received the most votes nationwide, regardless of state-by-state results. And this is a big deal for the power of a president because it signals that the majority of the country is behind the president's visions and policies for the future. And not only does it give Trump's party more leverage when negotiating with other political leaders in Congress, but it also builds public trust and confidence, making it harder for opponents to block or undermine their agenda. And you can hear that sentence in 2 very different ways, to be honest. But what's staggering is that this is actually the first time that a Republican has actually won the popular vote since 2004. That signals a pretty monumental shift in the country. Oh, but it goes much further than that, because Trump's Republican Party has also won what they call the governing trifecta. You see, not only did Trump successfully win the presidency, but his party won control of the Senate, and they've also now won control of the House. And if you don't know why that is such a big deal, let me tell you something.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. All right. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something.
You see, the Senate is comprised of 100 senators, 2 from each state. And it's one of 2 chambers that make up US Congress. And those 2 chambers are where all of the important legislation that directly affects your life either gets passed or blocked. So it's pretty damn important. And not even the president has full control of what happens in there. But in saying that, if Trump's party holds the majority of seats in there, Trump's legislative agenda and appointments are more likely to proceed because they'll have more votes. And the second chamber, the House, is very similar to the first, but this one's a lot bigger, 435 members in there. And if you have control of both House and Senate, Trump's proposed new laws and changes have a way better chance of actually becoming a reality. And again, you can hear that in 2 very different ways. And for contrast, that was actually a huge limiting factor for Biden, because while he was still president, the Republican Party, the opposition, they regained control of the House. That then created a divided government, and it made it nearly impossible for Biden to majorly advance any drastic changes that he wanted for his agenda, because a lot of it just got blocked and smacked down by the Republican Party. Oh, but the power keeps on going because, and this next one might be one of those that shocked the country the most. Donald Trump is only one man, but you have so many different major parts of the government that have huge, drastic changes in your daily life. And how those different arms of the government run and the choices that they make heavily depends on who the president puts in charge to run them. And Trump, this time around, has chosen some, let's say, very unexpected people to run some of the most powerful positions in America. He's chosen for loyalty and for those whose views and vision of America most closely align with his own. And this makes it even more interesting because he said just a week before the election that his biggest mistake in his first term was the people that he chose to run. And you can tell Trump has had a long time to rethink this, because some of the choices he's made has honestly sent shockwaves in Washington. I mean, let's start with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. He has made them the head of a brand new department called the Department of Government Efficiency, I think it's called. Oh, which also now has its own Twitter account. And you want to know what one of their first tweets was? Working overtime to ensure your tax dollars will be spent wisely.
Your money is being wasted, and the Department of Government Efficiency is going to fix that. We're going to get the government off your back and out of your pocketbook.
That's crazy. Just think about that for a second. You have a billionaire person from the private sector advising the government on how they spend your taxes. That is unprecedented. And then the next tweet that they put out, we need super high IQ small government revolutionaries willing to work 80 plus hours a week on unglamorous cost cutting. If that's you, DM this account with your CV. Elon and Vivek will review the top 1% of applicants. That's crazy. And he even said at the beginning, he said, this is going to be very low to almost unpaid work. So yeah, you gotta be a revolutionary. And just hearing that, you can hear that in two very different ways. Again, Trump appointed Tom Homan as the border czar. And to give you a bit of flavor of who that is.
How you doing?
The following clips are from the man who is going to be carrying out the largest deportation operation in U.S. history.
We have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is that worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
And so the recommendation of the many that you recommended family separation.
I recommended zero tolerance.
Which includes family separation.
The same as is with every U.S. citizen parent gets arrested when they're with a child.
Legal asylees are not charged with any crime.
When you enter the country illegally, it's violation 8 United States Code 1325.
Seeking asylum is legal.
If you want to seek asylum, you go through the port of entry, do it the legal way. The Attorney General of the United States has made that clear. You have failed American people for not securing the border and closing loopholes.
Mr. Holman.
You work for me. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer. You work for me. I got a message to the millions of illegal aliens that Joe Biden's releasing our country in violation of federal law. You better start packing now. And I got another message to the criminal cartels in Mexico. You smuggled enough fentanyl across this country to kill 148,000 young Americans. You have killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined. And that's when President Trump gets back in office. He's going to designate you a terrorist organization, and he's going to wipe you off the face of the earth. You're done. You're done.
Trump named Pete Hegseth, who is a veteran that has served in Afghan and Iraq, but is currently a Fox News anchor. He named him the Secretary of Defense. And what shocked everyone about this, I think even Trump supporters, is that he is being put in charge of the most powerful military in the world, which is usually a spot reserved for those with decades of high-level, strategic experience. But for Pete Hegseth, this will be his first ever political role. He appointed Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, which would make him the country's top health official. And it would essentially allow him to carry out his vision of how to make America healthy again. And I mean, to show you how unorthodox and anti-establishment some of these picks are, the day that RFK was chosen, pharmaceutical companies' stocks tanked. Almost unanimously. He chose Matt Gaetz for the Attorney General, which shook up a lot of people. I mean, in the BBC's words, Trump picking Gates to head justice sends shockwaves and a strong message. And then the line under that, Donald Trump's nomination of Congressman Matt Gaetz to his attorney general has arrived like a thunderclap in Washington. And I mean, there's a bunch more similar to this, which I don't have time to go through, but the point is, Trump is sending a clear message, not just to Washington, but the entire country. He intends to shake up the establishment when he returns to power. And when you have not just the president, but his entire administration loyal to one cause, there are far less roadblocks in your way to achieving whatever your vision is. But it doesn't stop there. We now combine all of those previous things that we spoke about with the highest legal authority in the country. Now, there is many ways to describe the Supreme Court, the final judge, the ultimate power, but the bottom line is, it is the highest judicial authority in the United States. They are the ones who can interpret the Constitution. They are the one who puts checks on the president and Congress to make sure no one exceeds their authority. And whenever there is a highly contentious law or dispute that simply cannot be agreed upon with lower levels of government, that issue then gets pushed up to them and they often get the final word. And in recent years, they've ruled on some of the biggest issues like the national right to abortion, gun laws, and even how elections are run. Oh, and just to make it crazier, justices on the Supreme Court serve lifetime appointments, meaning you can't fire them. As you'd imagine, whoever makes up the Supreme Court really freaking matters. And here's the point where you can see even that tipping in Trump's favor, because 6 of the 9 justices were appointed by Republican presidents, 3 were by Donald Trump himself when he was in the White House. The other 3 were picked by Democratic presidents. For perspective, the current court has been called the most conservative-leaning in modern U.S. history. And look, with that being said, I do want to emphasize, these 9 justices, yes, while they may have a slight political leaning, they are some of the most vetted, educated, and experienced people out there because of the power that they hold. So it's not like Trump can just waltz in and just get anything done just because there was a slight conservative leaning. And that's the thing. Ultimately, although sometimes it might not feel like it, I hope that going through this whole explanation does actually show, or maybe comfort some, that there are actually so many different checks and balances built into the US political system so that someone can't just come along like a dictator and make any changes that they want to without anyone else agreeing. For the majority of changes that one party does want to make, there's often an equal amount of people that want the exact opposite. So yes, by many metrics, Trump may have more power than any US president, at least in our lifetime, but in a functioning democracy, no one is above the law and the will of the people, including Trump. And hey, let's be real, we're all in it together, even us not living in America. Because let's be honest, the decisions that America makes on foreign policy, which Trump does plan to make a lot of, always has a ripple effect across the world and affects us all. I mean, if Keir Starmer and Trump start beefing, which it's bloody looking like they will, I'm gonna be over here feeling that too. But I mean, with that being said, you hope for the best, you plan for the worst, and if you do neither of those, at least you can subscribe to the channel right now, and you'll be able to keep updated with what goes on regardless. So, I hope you enjoyed a little political summary. That was fun, wasn't it? I love you guys, and I will see you soon.
And that's a stone cold fact. The data proves it. And guess what? He's going to do it again.